All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Solver Sessions with Snaps and Solve. We are really excited today to be talking about duplicates, deflecting duplicates, the impacts of duplicates, all things duplicates. Hopefully it's going to be an exciting topic for us to cover. So just to tell you a little bit about how we'll run today. So there'll be three parts to our webinar. So we'll talk firstly about the problem of duplication, how that impacts councils, and some of the downstream impacts that are caused by receiving duplicate reports. We've got a special guest on the call who I'll introduce shortly to help us talk about that part of the webinar. We'll then jump into talking all about how we're proposing to solve this. So we've been working hard over the last sort of month or two, last couple of quarters even, on really understanding this problem and how to solve it well. And then we also want to talk a little bit just sort of future facing about, duplicates is a really interesting AI-based feature for us, and we have plenty of things on the roadmap there that hopefully can be very exciting for you to hear about. So just a little bit of housekeeping just to start with. I'll encourage you to ask questions as we go. Many of you are in the public chat already, but please do ask questions about anything that we might cover with Kieran from City of Glen, Eira, or if there's anything as we go through our solutions, any of the AI roadmap stuff as well, please chuck them in the chat. They'll get curated and we can spend some time. We have 2 Q&A sections where we can cover off responses to those questions. This session is being recorded as well, so for any of you that might have to drop off early, or if you have colleagues that would like to follow on later, or would get value from this content, then we'll share the recording to all of you at the end of the session. So to start with, I would like to welcome our special guest. Very excited to introduce Kieran Nagra. So Kieran is the Customer Experience Coordinator at City of Glen, Eira. So really appreciate you joining us today, Kieran, to talk about duplication rates and how that impacts you at the City of Glen, Eira. So look, to start off, I'll hand over to you, Kieran, just to tell us a little bit then about, set the stage for us, I suppose, about duplicate requests at Glen, Eira. Talk to us a little bit about how this sort of problem presents itself for you.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks everyone for joining today, and again, Pete, thanks for the opportunity to talk about the issue. I guess before I get into the issue specifically, I'd like to give everyone a little bit of a context around how Glen, Eira customer experience team is set up and how they work. Just because it'll be a bit of a surprise for a lot of people here, because I can see a lot of Shires have joined in, and just the sheer amount of volumes coming into the customer experience team. So just for context, we're one of very few metro councils in Victoria that still run a very centralized operation. Every single request through any channel all comes through the CX team across all digital, phones, front counter, everything is covered by this one team. So our customer experience team actually takes approximately 22 to 25,000 inquiries across these channels each month, out of which 1,500 to 2,000 inquiries would be your snaps and solve requests alone, and that is monthly. And as we all know, or some of us at least, that snaps and solve, it's growing in popularity within our municipalities, and we're really pleased to see that. However, due to the sheer amount of volume of requests coming through snaps and solve, and it becoming a preferred channel for a lot of our customers, some requests pose a very unique challenge for us, which is, the duplication of requests, same requests coming through multiple customers or across different channels. And this is usually especially true for issues like dump rubbish or assets that contain QR codes to report issues through the SSS app, which tend to be quite, visible and time sensitive, parking related issues. So there's a few examples there where, we experience duplication, and often, a resident might report something over the phone, and then another resident might send in a customer request through the snaps and Solve app, or vice versa, or multiple customers, as I said, reporting the issue through the app without knowing there's already a request in the system. So these duplicates present a few key challenges. Obviously, firstly, they distort our reporting. When we brief our executive team or provide operational updates, we want to be confident that the data is clean and is reflective of what is actually happening on the ground, but without manually deduplicating, the numbers can appear inflated or misleading. And moving on, I guess, secondly, the manual deduplication process takes up time, obviously resources. Our team has to sift through reports to identify and remove these requests. There's an additional step that involves checking addresses, cross-referencing our CRM before the report is actually triaged. And that not only delays things, but pulls staff away from processing new and unique requests, which can obviously tend or have an effect on our service level agreements. Ultimately, also on how satisfied residents are with the experience, because then there's some inconsistencies with experiences, because you could have a different experience on the phone, via email, and then Snaps and Solve, because the bar is set so high with Snaps and Solve, the app itself is so seamless that the residents expect the same response in return when conversing with councils once the issue is resolved. So this can cause delays, which kind of throws that out of the window. So I guess addressing duplicates isn't just about data hygiene issues. It's about improving efficiency, enabling better decision making, I guess, and ensuring we deliver timely outcomes for the community and provide a consistent customer experience.
That's great. Thanks, Kieran. That was a great summary of, like I say, not only sort of how customer sort of service works at Glen Eira, but also then, you know, the scale and size of the duplicate problem. Yeah, I'm keen to just sort of, you know, elaborate a little more then, I suppose, on, you know, there are many things that City of Glen Eira will be focused on and your team will be focused on solving. Could you just elaborate a little more on some of the impacts then, and I suppose why is this such a critical issue for you to fix? How does it affect you and your team?
Well, we've seen a noticeable volume of duplicate requests, particularly in high visibility incident types such as dump rubbish, or as I mentioned earlier, with assets that have QR codes to report, you know, issues through the app. So these duplicates artificially kind of inflate our total volumes, which basically distorts the bigger picture. You know, as I mentioned earlier, when executive team, you know, they rely on dashboards and reports to guide strategic decision making. Inflated figures obviously can lead to misinformed decisions. So on the ground, however, you know, it creates confusion. Residents might submit the same request multiple times if they don't see an immediate resolution. It causes delays. Obviously, councillors often raise concerns when they perceive delays, sometimes not realizing it's the same issue being flagged repeatedly. So from an operational standpoint, and especially, and that's why I set the scene earlier about Glen Eira and how the customer experience team is set up, the sheer amount of inquiries coming through, duplicates is something that if we can, you know, and I'll talk about an example later, but it can affect how we deploy our field teams. Contractors may be dispatched more than once to the same location, which is obviously, you know, inefficient. And in cases where there's cost per visit, you know, for instance, dump rubbish collection, this directly hits our budget, because we for a while didn't actually know that the contractor was actually getting a report with multiple duplicate requests and charging us multiple times for that same request, but only going out once to collect that same rubbish. Ultimately, really, if I have to sum it up, it slows everything down, Pete. You know, our team is spending time sorting, verifying duplicate reports instead of moving efficiently, you know, through new requests. And that has a knock-on effect on SLAs and can lower resident satisfaction. So actually reducing these duplicates again, isn't about cleaning up the data, but it's about driving smarter operations, reducing avoidable costs, I guess, and delivering a smoother, more transparent service to our community.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Kieran. Again, just a great sort of summary about that all sort of operational and especially the sort of impacts from a cost perspective that it causes for you. So look, you've alluded to a sort of a few things that you've been doing to potentially try and sort of manage, and you mentioned then an example where you can kind of talk through how it, a concrete example of how it's impacting you. Just talk us through sort of how you're trying to sort of track duplication, manage duplication, how you're trying to identify what those cost impacts are. I'd love to hear a bit more about how you manage that.
Look, right now, just purely identifying duplicate requests is almost entirely a manual process. Our staff have to sometimes even rely on their own judgment and spot when a new report is actually a repeat of something that could have already been logged. Often across different systems like Snaps and Solve and our internal CRM. I think someone's asked a question there. I'll just answer it. It's Pathway that we use while we touch on the CRM. There are certain incident types such as dump rubbish where there is a set rule. Basically, we've set a blanket rule that for dump rubbish specifically, we're going to just double check anyways, because there's a cost involved as well. And obviously these kind of processes make everything quite time consuming and resource heavy. And for every potential duplicate, someone has to check the location data, timestamps, photos, and request details before determining if it's actually a new issue or we've already actioned it. And if you multiply that across hundreds of requests per week, it becomes a significant operational burden. And the example that I wanted to touch on was, there was a water fountain in one of our parks that was out of action on a hot day, and there was a lot of people visiting the park with their kids on that day. And because there was a QR code there to report that water fountain if there was any issues with it, we received 34 separate reports within a span of a few hours about that same issue. And each report came through as a new request. And without automation, every single one had to be reviewed, triage, resolved manually by replying to the customer that this has been reported already and someone's looking into it. Obviously, that's driving up administrative time, increasing the response cost for what was in reality a single minor fault. And that's just one example, right? We also see this regularly with dump rubbish, by far the most common and costly category for duplicates. Residents are quick to kind of report visible waste, which is great, but it means that the same pile might get reported multiple times. So all in all, I guess while our team works hard to manage it, the lack of integration or automated detection means we're constantly playing catch up, and streamlining this would not only free up time, but also enhance the accuracy of our data and reduce costs across the board.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kieran. Great example you talked to there. Obviously, that's a perfect sort of example of where, we can be obviously doing more to kind of manage that influx of reports, like you say, they get created as new, when in reality they are easy to sort of identify as the same underlying issue there. So we're about to jump to a poll, but what I might do is just put out another kind of reminder to our audience that we'll do a quick Q&A with Kieran after this poll. So if you do have any questions, please keep adding those to the public chat, and then we can spend a few minutes with Kieran on a Q&A after that. So, but what we'll do now, having sort of learned about duplication for City of Glen Eira and some of the challenges that's caused, we're keen to then sort of jump to a poll for everyone on the call now to hear from you. So how significant a problem is duplicate reporting for you? Is this a significant issue where you suspect a substantial volume, a high volume of reports are actually duplicates? Maybe it's a moderate issue. You acknowledge that there is a problem there, but you have a way of managing that currently, or it's a manageable sort of volume, versus it's negligible that you don't think that's an issue for you. So keen to jump to a poll now, and then get everyone's thoughts on how that affects you. So the poll is active, and you can see now on the screen where we're at with the results. So we'll keep this open just for a minute or two and give everyone a chance to respond. So it's interesting, we can see here that between significant and moderate, that's the bulk of the results here. So only 8% feel like it's a negligible issue. So certainly a problem space worthy of solving, I think. So yeah, really interesting to see that that's an issue that's affecting lots of you here on the call. All right, we will keep that poll open anyway for a couple of minutes, so feel free to keep adding in your answers or responses there if you haven't had a chance to. What I might do now then is actually just jump back to my presentation, and let's just jump then to a Q&A. So I'll just put the slides to the background a second there. So Kieran, we've got a couple of questions then that have come in. Do you have an issue with duplicates for tree branches and pruning? That's an issue that we're hearing about in Port Phillip. So just keen to know, is that a similar issue for you?
Yeah, it's very similar here, Ben, but because it falls under the dump tree branches incident type, so we basically triage it as dump rubbish. So it follows the same process, which is having that blanket rule that we're going to have to check that address just for any bundled branch collections, or for anyone else reporting dumped tree branches through any other channel.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, Kieran. Then there's a question we've got in from Ralph as well, which is, does Snaps and Solve pick up duplicate requests within a certain radius? Yep, absolutely, Ralph. That's how our sort of duplicate detection algorithm works. It's one of the many things we consider when we're trying to determine a potential duplicate, is the proximity of the reports and the location information that we get during the report. So I will talk a fair bit more in our next section about how that works, but yeah, that's one of the factors we look at. Then we had a question from Joshua then as well, is do you close out a duplicate request or mark as solved, or do you leave it open for the notes on the original Snaps and Solve report?
No, we close it out and mark it as duplicate in the notes for reporting purposes. It's just easy to pick it up with some text. There's no option to mark it as duplicate, so we have to, unfortunately mark it as solved. But the fact that you've got messaging capabilities within the portal, makes it easier to, converse with the customers and let them know and give them an update through the portal without actually doing anything in the CRM. The only problem, the major issue is closing out duplicates in bulk, which I guess I've had a sneak peek, but Pete will talk about later. This is going to become easier.
Thanks, Kieran. Well, look, that's I might take the opportunity to use that as the segue into our next section. So look, I just wanted to round out this section by saying a huge thank you to you, Kieran, and to City of Glen Eira for being part of our webinar. We really appreciate it. It's been great to hear from you and learn more about the problem space for you. And yeah, thanks again for your time.
No problem. My pleasure, Pete, and I'm happy to connect with anyone. I'm on LinkedIn as well, Kieran Nagra. And if anyone wants to connect, please feel free to send me an invitation. And, we're always happy to kind of work with other councils and get an understanding of how, everyone else deals with their issues. And, we can together kind of move forward in this space. And like I said, I've had a sneak peek in what you're about to show everyone. So, a lot of great work from your end as well. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Kieran. All right. I'll just remove you off the stream, Kieran, but obviously you'll still be part of the webinar. And like I say, if there are any questions that you have for Kieran, as he's mentioned, feel free to connect, but we'll also follow up after the webinar and make sure we respond to any questions that are coming in via the Q&A as well. So, All right, so let's keep moving then. So we've heard all about the problem of duplication and some of the impacts that it causes. So let's talk about how we're solving it. So where I wanted to start was actually what we mean by the term duplicate. Now that might seem like a pretty obvious place to start, but as I'll talk you through, it's actually a term that has a lot of gray area. But let's start with an easy example, right? So what we're looking at here is a report that was sent in by Snapper. And so it obviously consists of a photo. We have map and geo-based information here. We have a date that the report was created, and we know information about the snapper and the description that was provided by that snapper as well. Now, if we compare that report to another report that was submitted, so report 2 at the bottom of the screen. So you see, again, we obviously collected all the same type of information as part of this reporting flow. So photo, the map, the geo, and the description. Now, when you go and compare the content of those photos and you look at things like the geo and the map information, and then some critical sort of indicators, if you like, in the description. So it's talking, for example, here about the fact that this issue was, first noticed, say, 8 months ago, and then this description refers to 6 months ago. I think pretty much everybody on the call, most people on the call, would be pretty confident in saying that second report is a duplicate of the first. Right? The information is similar enough to determine that is a duplicate. But what happens in each of these instances? So suppose the instant types are different that a snapper has chosen. So the locations might be similar, the photos look similar, but the instant types are different. Maybe the timestamps that you get on the reports are really wide-ranging. Maybe they're weeks, months apart. It might be that there is disparity in the photos. Maybe one photo was, say, taken at nighttime, one was taken during the daytime. It's difficult to determine if they are exactly the same thing, even though maybe the location information is very similar. Maybe there's missing information in one of the reports. So one report might contain 5 photos in a very detailed description. Another report might only contain 1 photo or no photo at all, maybe. And then there might be a whole host of other reasons why reports might be different. But what's happening in each of those instances then, it's much harder to confirm if it's actually a duplicate. Your confidence about determining a duplicate decreases in each of those scenarios, right? So how do we choose to solve this? So we built an AI model that systematically looks at a variety of factors and then determines the likelihood of match. So I think one of the questions before, I think from Ben, maybe? No, not Ben, sorry, was Ralph, was asking about radius and location information. So we're looking at that as well as a variety of factors to determine, or our model does rather, to determine the likelihood of duplication. So it's first looking at the similarity of the photo content. So we're obviously collecting photos as part of the Snapper reporting flow, and how closely do those photos align and the content of those photos. We're looking at the proximity of the locations. Again, that's a big part of our reporting flow, is collecting that information. So how close are the two pieces of geo information, the location information. We are comparing instant types, even though we know that snappers can sometimes select different instant types for similar reports. And then we're looking at things like the elapsed time between the reports and any similarities or in the descriptions. And what our model does then, it takes 2 reports and it can compare them and gives us a score about the likelihood of it being a duplicate. And so that's something then that when we talk about, confidently saying whether something is a duplicate or not, that score can be really important to help you make that decision. So that's one part of the solution we looked at, is to say, how do we build a model that helps us determine the likelihood of it being a duplicate? And then the other side of the problem that we looked at is to say, actually, who should, I suppose, wear the burden, if you like, of triaging and understanding duplication and if it's occurring? And we really had 2 choices here to make. So the first option was to say, well, let's make that part of the snapper experience. So at the point that a report is about to be created that might be a duplicate, we will sort of interrupt that snapper flow in a graceful, elegant way, but we will interrupt them nonetheless and let them know that they're about to potentially create a duplicate. Or the second option was to just let that happen, allow snappers to keep reporting, and then give you, the solvers, the customers on the other side of that equation, some smarts and some tools to kind of manage and triage duplicates more effectively. And we actually think there's some real benefits to actually just option one, which is stopping the reports happening in the first place. So Kieran, in the first part of our session, talked about many of these impacts. So about the triaging overhead and the impact to SLAs and the impact to customer service, about the impacts on the data set. And so obviously if you have duplicates in there that are you're having to report on and maybe manually kind of take out a certain volume of reports to get a more accurate reporting position. And then obviously he talked about probably the biggest impact of all, which is then just operationally on how field teams are sort of sent out to resolve issues and the cost implications of doing that. And so actually we think our preferred solution, certainly for MVP, is to actually then stay focused on how do we just stop duplicate reports coming to you in the first place. So that's really where we sort of focused our energy and time from a solution perspective. So I'm actually going to jump into a demo then now, and I'll just talk you through how we've chosen to solve this. So let me just share this tab instead. Just a note there from Frank, which is to say, there we go. Can everybody see my screen now? Okay. I think everyone can see my screen. No, you can't see my screen. Okay. Sorry, bear with me a second. There we go. Now you can see my screen. Perfect. All right. Sorry about that. So what you're looking at here then is our snapper experience. And so in this scenario, you as a solver would have enabled, set up duplication, deduplication rather, as part of your package, your setup with Snaps and Solve. And so we wanted to talk through then the implications of what this would mean for snappers and talk you through that sort of solution that we've just alluded to. So here what you're looking at is the first part of our reporting flow. So I want you to imagine here that somebody is taking a photo. They've noticed that there's an abandoned vehicle that they want to report. And so they add a photo, they'll click next. They will confirm then a location for that incident. They'll then select what this incident type is. And so you'll see a variety of incident types that obviously you can choose from as a snapper. And so here we're selecting parked cars. And so you'll notice now here, sorry, that was a bit quick. You might have noticed there that spinner, that little loading state was saying checking for duplicates. And so this matching algorithm that I talked about, where we're looking at the similarity of photos, we're looking at location information, we're looking at descriptions. That algorithm is then running on the back end, and it's determining whether there are any existing reports in your reporting set that might match what is about to be reported. So it's doing that duplication check for the snapper. And so what you're looking at now, what a snapper is looking at, is to say, in this example, City of Hobson's Bay, or whoever it is you're reporting to, they might already know about this issue. So just to remind you, you're reporting an issue of an abandoned vehicle. And so here's your report that you're partway through creating. But our algorithm has returned 3 possible matches based on that information we talked about. So you'll see them here force ranked by this score that I talked about before. So as a snapper, you'll see this information that tells you, actually, we think this is a 98% match to what you're about to report already. So the snapper gets a variety of other information that they can use to kind of determine if that's actually a match. So you'll see proximity information. You'll see things like the incident incident category as well, reporting category. So you can determine if it's the same thing as what you're reporting. You can also then jump in if you want to and see some additional information. So you can see other photos that might have been submitted as part of that initial report. You can see location information. You can see a more detailed description, things like a timestamp. So these are all important signals that help you determine whether this is in fact a match or not. So then from this point, as a snapper, I have the option to then say, actually, I think this first result is in fact a match. And then this is a really sort of critical point in the flow now. So You're seeing a confirmation screen, which is asking you to say, are you sure this is a match? And this is the key point where we're then kind of educating snappers and telling them that by selecting yes, that it is a match, we won't submit a new report to you, the customer, the solver. We won't be sending a new report anymore. What we'll do instead is let you know, we'll send a signal to you, and we'll talk about this a little more in a second, that somebody was about to report this. They're interested in this incident. They're interested in seeing it be solved, but we are not going to create a new record for you in your system. So we're stopping the duplicates being created at this stage. So once a snapper confirms, they'll then push to the end of what we're saying is our kind of matching flow, or deduplication flow. And you'll see a couple of sort of key pieces of information here, I suppose. Firstly, thank you for confirming a match and indicating to them that actually we're alerting you, the solver, to the fact that they have matched. And then we're also allowing snappers to solve along. So the fact that they were intending to report that incident suggests they're probably quite connected to it. They would like to see it resolved, and therefore we give them the option to save that and follow the sort of, or see status changes, if you like, in that report, so they can save matches. So that gives you a sort of summation there, I suppose, of the snapper flow, about how that will work when duplication is enabled. They will see that as part of their reporting flow, and it sort of strongly discourages the creation, if you like, of any new reports that we suspect are highly likely to be duplicates. So what does that mean on the solver side, the customer side? So you'll be, hopefully many of you will be familiar with our portal experience. I know many of you are integrated, and so you obviously, you're working your CRMs, and so this information will come by the API. And so what you'll see here is a new part of our list view experience, which is called duplicates deflected. So you'll see a count here, a number of deflections that are happening against each report. So this report effectively now becomes your original, the first version of the kind of the incident, if you like. And then this is telling you how many times somebody, a snapper, has confirmed a match to that. So you're getting a sense of how visible, if you like, how important to snappers that instant is, but you're not getting, in this instance, 12 new reports or 23 new reports. You just have an original. So that's what it will look like here. You'll start to get a count of duplicates. You'll then also see at a report details level, you'll see a new section then in our sort of summary page of report details that talks about, again, duplication, and you'll see your deflection rate here. So you can see at a more granular level what specifically is happening on a report by report basis. And it'll also just talk to you about this sort of definition of deflection, what we mean by that, which is when a snapper has matched to an original, and so it's kind of deflected a new report from being created. So you'll see it there in our list view, and you'll see it in the report details. But critically then, you'll also see it if I jump up to our dashboard section. Bear with me 1 second. Let's do that. You'll see then now that we are starting to surface some information about duplicates and deflection rates in your dashboard as well. So you're starting to get summary information over timeframes, so you can see trends in duplicate rates and trends in deflection rates as well, that I think are going to be very important in those sort of operational decision-making forums that you might have. Again, Kieran sort of talked about that, all the operational impacts this has. This will allow you to start seeing and understanding the trend of duplication rate over time. So we're surfacing, we're removing the problem rather of duplicate reports, but we're certainly surfacing insights and information about duplicate and deflection rates in the solver experience for you. So that gives you a sort of summary then of how we're thinking about, certainly from an MVP perspective, about how we want to solve the problem of deduplication. Now, I'll jump back to my presentation and just talk through a few more bits before we might run some polls and a bit more of a Q&A. So look, the fact that we are now shifting, I suppose, the experience of matching and asking snappers to confirm, we've done some pretty deep usability testing with our snapper base and wanting to make sure that they really understand what we're asking them to do there. Do they really grasp why deduplication is so important, the impacts that it causes to you as solvers, as customers? And actually what we found is they have a really deep understanding of why duplication is an issue, how it causes issues for you, and ultimately sort of back, to them in terms of, satisfaction and speed of resolution of instance. And so this just sort of reinforced to us, we feel very confident that this is a good way to be solving deduplication, because snappers are already there. They kind of already understand why this is a problem, and they were very willing to kind of be part of the solution and help match duplicate reports. So when is this available? So we are launching in mid-June, so very, very soon. Within the next couple of weeks, this is going to be live in our platform, available to customers. We're going to be rolling out to enterprise customers. So please reach out to our customer success managers. Each of you will have a CSM, so please reach out to them and have a conversation with them about the availability of our sort of deduplication feature for you. And then the exciting thing is that there is plenty more in the backlog around duplication as well. We think this is sort of just the beginning of how we might choose to solve this problem. So really, yeah, what we've shown you there is very much the MVP. So before we get into what might be coming from a duplication perspective, I'm really keen to just run another poll in with everybody here. So we've gone through there what our MVP solution could be with how we'll deal with duplicates. Like I say, really focusing on asking snappers, controlling that source, if you like, and asking snappers not to create the duplicate in the first place. So keen to jump to a poll and just gauge everybody's perspective then on how useful and how valuable you think that might be in terms of reducing duplication rates for you. So very useful. Hopefully it'll be a key driver for you in significantly reducing those duplicate reports. Undecided, maybe you're not quite sure whether that will solve the problem or how it might impact things for you, or whether you ultimately just don't think that's valuable. Maybe it's not, you don't see that as quite the right way to fix things, or maybe you already have a solution in place that solves for it well. So keen to jump to a poll again and just gauge from everybody here how they're sort of feeling about that as a solution. All right. Well, that's great to see. First off, I had a very, very sort of tiny worry that people might click not valuable, and that would have made the rest of the webinar pretty awkward. But no, that's great to see that hopefully what we've gone through there represents a lot of value for you, or potentially a lot of value for you. When we were doing a lot of our customer discovery work around this, we really just heard this kind of overwhelming piece of feedback that was just stop duplicates. It wasn't sort of help us manage duplicates or help us triage necessarily in a different way. It was just stop duplicates from happening. So that was really, like I say, why we've chose to focus there for our MVP. So it's great that the vast majority of you think that this will be a really useful feature for you. Again, we'll leave that poll open just for a couple of minutes whilst we work through the rest of our webinar. So feel free, if you haven't already, to keep sort of adding to those results. So I'll jump back again just to my presentation here. So what other ideas do we have in the backlog? So there's plenty of opportunity to kind of keep improving how we can solve for duplicates and how we can provide you with great sort of tools to resolve duplicates. So first off is highlighting potential duplicates and deflection rates in our solver map. So some of you will be familiar that it was about maybe 6 weeks ago, or just sort of slightly earlier this year, we launched Solver Map in our portal. So that's an opportunity for you to go and look at all of your reports with boundary overlays, where you can see suburb and ward and boundary information. You can see heat maps about reports, and so you can see shortly we'll be adding things like satellite view and street view into those maps. So they've become a really important sort of triaging tool for you. But one of the things that's in our backlog is adding deflection rates and potential duplicates into the map view. So what that'll tell you then is potentially things like, we'll give different colored pin treatments. We'll tell you how many deflections are happening at particular locations and what the sort of heat map for deflections looks like as well. And that'll really tell you then where the sort of highly visible reports are that a lot of people are intending to report. And so it gives you this really interesting signal about where you should potentially prioritize solving that kind of original report that's driving a lot of the duplicates. So really sort of layering on some more functionality and smarts into our solver map is one area that's in our backlog. We're also looking at the idea of then creating a linking and unlinking sort of system in our Solver portal. So whilst our MVP will hopefully go a very long way to stopping the majority of duplicates, it is unfortunately never going to stop all duplicates. We'd love to be able to say that it would, but we obviously do give the opportunity for snappers to say none of them match and keep submitting a report. So it's possible that you might still get a very, very small number of duplicates coming through, but it also might be that you have some legacy duplicates before you potentially enable the feature like our duplication feature here. You might have legacy duplicates. So this is giving you an opportunity to just keep your legacy data clean as well, and then just safeguard against that small percentage that might still come through. So this gives you the opportunity to link potential duplicates that we're finding in the portal. And then lastly is around just much richer insights around duplicates and deflection rates. So this is telling you that trend over time. It's giving you information about which categories are driving higher duplication rates, how that's changing over a sort of longer term period. So is it a seasonal, is it impacted by seasonality, for example? And it'll give you much richer context and richer information about how duplicates are being created or deflections of duplicates are happening. So there's a couple of ideas that we're considering as well as part of our backlog. So a big part of how we work in product at Snaps and Solve is to be as customer driven as we can be. And so keen now to just jump to another poll and ask you and get your direct involvement then in kind of shaping duplicates moving forward. So what would be most valuable for us to continue to add to this feature? So is it layering on information around duplicates into the solver map? Is it around providing that linking and unlinking functionality, or is it actually just rich insights about why they're happening and where they're happening, and what categories are driving duplication rates? So keen to jump to another poll and just get everybody's steer on that. And look, this type of information feeds directly into our product backlog. We really, like I say, are very driven by sort of customer discovery and customer demand for features. So really excited to sort of see how you think about this, and we'll take this directly into our prioritization. So let's jump to another poll then, and we'll gauge how everyone's feeling. All right. So it seems like we've got a pretty even split then around our solver map view and then the linking and unlinking of reports. It's still just sort of twitching a little bit there, but it looks pretty stable now as about those two. So look, that's great. That's really useful validation for us to kind of understand how we can, like I say, continue iterating on this and add hopefully, even more value to you around duplicates as a feature. So thank you for responding to that one. That's super useful insight for us. So again, that poll will stay open, so please feel free to keep adding. So lastly, just to finish, before we move into a Q&A then, keen to just talk a little more broadly around our AI roadmap. So duplicates is one feature that we've been working hard on, that we're adding to our platform, that falls under the banner of sort of powered by AI. And it's one of many things we have been exploring and will continue to explore. So I was keen to just touch on this topic a little more broadly about our AI roadmap. So you will see over the course of the next, the coming months and the coming quarters, an increasing number of powered by AI badges in our experience in the solver side and in the snapper side. And really, this is then going to represent a sort of a collection of AI-based features that we think are increasingly important to add to our platform. And the reason we want to do that, I'll come all the way back to sort of some of the things Kieran talked about again at the start when he was articulating why this is a problem. Efficiency in triaging and efficiency of solving is an incredibly important thing. Often the solution to triaging and solving incidents is not adding more people. And so we think there's a huge opportunity to keep layering in sort of smart features into our platform that helps you triage more effectively, in a quicker way, setting up field teams to solve things in a quicker way. That drives a higher CSAT. It reduces cost. There's a lot of potential upside. So, and we actually think there's a really powerful sort of collection of features there that are all AI based that we want to start introducing. So just to give you a little sneak peek about what they'll look like. So we're working at the moment on prioritization, a prioritization model that helps you determine which reports you should consider triaging ahead of others, because we think maybe they represent higher risks than others, or we think they'll have a much more material impact on driving CSAT if you solve them sooner. We're also looking then at suggested reassigns and suggested instant types. We're also looking at then Snap AI, which is to create a much leaner and quicker and smarter snapper experience, where based on the photo, we'll determine the instant location. What that will mean for you as solvers then is you get a much more consistent selection of instant types. So there's a variety of things that we're looking at that we're really excited to be exploring. And we're looking at a variety of different models to help us build those solutions. And so every quarter now, we're also committing, Snaps and Solve are committing to running proof of concepts related to AI and related to sort of exploring what all these new AI models can do. And so you'll see moving forward an increasing number of these features make their way into production that's hopefully really going to set you up to solve and triage things in a very efficient way. So we're really excited to be sort of have a renewed focus or a sort of deep focus on this as a business. So I'm going to run just a final quick poll on that exact topic, and then we'll finish with a Q&A. And I see there's plenty of interesting questions that have been thrown into the chat there, which is great. So keen to just get a gauge then from everybody here. You know, for the last 12, 18, 24 months, AI has been a sort of really top of mind topic for a lot of us. But keen to just gauge from everybody, how often are you using an AI-based tool in your day-to-day role? So is it something that you routinely do? It's part of your everyday now. Is it for sporadic tasks? You sort of maybe recognize the value of those types of tools, but you don't have a sort of a regular use case for them. Is it something that you try and you maybe dip your toe in the water with, but you don't sort of regularly use? Maybe it's something that you're not interested in, you never use them. Or it's also possible, and we do hear this from customers, that you might have a policy against using an AI-based tool. So keen to jump to a poll and gauge where everyone's at. All right, so we've got a few more options here, and there's a bit more of a spread. Really we're sort of landing, or the bulk of the responses there seem to be somewhere between sort of sporadic and trying now and again. So hopefully that marries up pretty well then with the fact that, you know, we as a platform and as a business can start focusing a little more on introducing some tools then that will help you to undertake those sporadic tasks, and hopefully sort of, you know, when those things are routine, it's helping you do that more efficiently as well. So that's a great gauge for us, just to understand your usage of AI tools in your role. So thanks. That was our last poll, but it's been great to just run those and get your thoughts and feedback on a few different areas related to you know, the problem space and our MVP solution, and then AI more broadly. So we've got about 10 minutes to go. So actually what I'm going to do now, just to kind of wrap things up, is just go to our Q&A section. And like I say, we'll see how many questions we can get through here. I've got a nice curated list in front of me to work through, but I'll probably spend sort of 7 or 8 minutes on some of these questions. And if we don't get to any, like I say, we will come back to you as we'll share a recording of this webinar with you, and any of the questions that we haven't been able to answer live, we'll respond to you. So you will get an answer to anything you've asked. So I'm going to start off by asking a question from Joshua. So how do you manage incorrect categorization of reports through the Snaps and Solve app? Does your team manually triage it and change the categorization through your CRM tools to get the report through the correct team? Thanks, Joshua. Look, great question. So yeah, we, as a team, we do lots of ride-alongs with customers. If you're interested in doing a ride-along where we can come and sit with your customer service team and sort of really learn about how triaging works for you, we would love to do that. Please reach out. We would very happy to come and do that kind of work. But we do often see that's the case when we do our ride-alongs, is that snappers may have, you know, inadvertently, maybe deliberately, who knows, but allocated the wrong instant type, or it's not quite the preferred instant type it's also possible you might have slightly different instant types in your CRM. And so we do see that can be quite, quite often be a part of the triaging process, is to select maybe a slightly different, an instant type in the CRM when the information is being transposed. Now, that's obviously different if you are fully integrated. That experience will be slightly different, but we do know there's a use case there where solvers, customers such as yourselves, want to change the original instant types that a snapper may have selected. Now, interestingly, one of the proof of concepts that I've just talked about there, where we're experimenting with AI models, which we'll be focusing on very soon, is to recommend sort of effectively the right instant type, or recommend a change to the instant type if a snapper has chosen the wrong one. So we are going to be bringing that into our solver experience, allowing you to much more efficiently correct and allocate the right instant types to reports. We know that has a big impact on sort of the quality of reporting as well. So it's a problem that we're very eager to solve. So thanks, Josh. That was a great question. I'll move forward to Kiki. So what if, say, there are 2 potholes within a 5-meter radius and both need to be filled? Would the SnapSen Solve duplicate detector sense that there are 2, or would it remove the duplicates thinking that this is only 1? Great question, Kiki. So it will come down to a variety of factors, I think, about the similarity of those reports. And so what I would say is it depends on the exact sort of matching accuracy that we get and how that's maybe presented to the snapper. But if, for example, we determine that we think actually that it's not a duplicate, or it might be a separate report because that location information is different, we can tune the model, and that might be something that we continue to do over time, is tune the model so that that wouldn't show up as a potential match in the list, unless we have sort of really, really high confidence that the location is exactly the same. So these are things that we'll continue to kind of refine and tweak in the model to make sure that where there's the possibility of that happening, is that they wouldn't effectively get marked as a duplicate, and therefore you don't get 2 valid reports. Yeah, it's definitely a use case that we're conscious of, is that where there is similarity in a report and the location is similar, but they are genuine reports. They are both worthy of sort of sending through and being solved, if you like. That we want to make sure that we are continuing to refine and tweak the model so that those things are not served as matches to snappers, and therefore you wouldn't hear about them. So yeah, that's something that we are very conscious of, Kiki, and how we're thinking about the algorithm and how it behaves in terms of serving up potential results. So from Emily, hi, this tool looks great. However, only about 1/3 of our CRMs come through SnapSen Solve. Can this model determine duplicates that have been submitted through other channels? Also a great question, Emily. So at the moment, our solution will look at other SnapSen Solve reports. But Kieran obviously talked about this before, and we do know that there are use cases where snappers might report something over the phone and then potentially also report something via an app. You might get walk-ins about an issue, and then somebody else entirely is sort of reporting the same thing. So we are definitely aware that sort of duplication happens across sort of all the channels that you are collecting reports via. So whilst we're not doing that for our MVP, it's certainly a part of our sort of our scope for duplication, deduplication as a feature that we want to look at, potentially that sort of full reporting volume. Now, I'll stress that is going to require a bit of discovery work for us to understand how we, via the API, via the integration into your CRM, we can kind of interrogate that broader data set. But we're very keen to keep exploring that part of the problem for sure, because we do understand that that would be an important way of continuing to kind of give you better information, better trustworthiness in deduplication as a feature. So great question, Emily. Not part of our MVP, but certainly something that we want to explore in the longer term. So if any of you are keen on reaching out, any of you are keen on running some discovery work to understand how we might do that, again, please reach out. We'd love to sort of spend some time learning about how we could potentially do that. I'll probably just jump to maybe sort of one final question, and I've got a close and just some information I wanted to share with everybody before we finish. Mitch has asked a question about how do you mitigate against PII or sensitive materials being shared with other snappers? Great question, Mitch, as well. So this is another one of our AI-powered features that is live in our platform now. Right? So you may be familiar with the fact that we have a snapper feed. So anytime a snapper comes to the Snaps and Solve app, they will see a feed of other reports. Now, we think this is a sort of a really great experience for snappers, really valuable, and it's also sort of very valuable for you in that it helps educate snappers about the variety of things they can report. You know, that feed is obviously filled with a variety of different instant types. But yeah, we were very conscious that when we launched sort of such a feature is that we didn't want to make visible potentially sensitive information in those reports. We didn't want that to be sort of front and center in the feed for every other snapper to see. So we actually have at the moment a flagging algorithm that is running that controls the sort of visibility in the feed, if you like. And that flagging algorithm works on sensitive information in the photos. It looks for PII, so if snappers might inadvertently be sharing any PII in the description or elsewhere in the report, is that the report gets flagged for that. And it also then gets flagged for any sort of overly aggressive sentiment towards you as a solver or a customer as well. And so really those kind of three things then form part of that flagging algorithm. And then if we get basically a hit on any of those kind of three things, we remove it from the feed, so the visibility is set to not shown. So that's how, again, another one of our AI-powered features works. And hopefully that just is a great example where you can see the power of kind of these AI-based, model-based features working well for you. So look, I'm conscious of time. They were all great questions. Thank you, everybody, for submitting those. I'm just going to move quickly to a sort of close then now, and we'll finish up given we're at time. Just wanted to say thank you to everybody that's taken the time to join us today. You know, we're very keen on engaging with customers on a really regular basis. This is one of several webinars that we have done and will continue to do. So thanks for joining us today. And obviously, you know, we really hope that you continue to come along to subsequent webinars that we're running. I think I want to say another thank you again to Kieran and to City of Glen Eira for joining us at the start today and talking through duplication. That was great to hear about, you know, their context. And then just to leave you with today, one of the things that hopefully you'll take away and consider is that if you're interested in learning more about your duplication rate, so often it can be quite hard for you to actually determine how many reports are actually duplicates in your current data set. It's hard to sort of get a gauge of and quantify how big that problem might be for you. So if you're keen on learning more about that, please reach out. We can run a free report for you based on the Snaps and Solve data and help you determine what percentage of reports our model thinks might be a duplicate. So that'll give you a really strong indication of how big a challenge it might be for you to solve. So please reach out to our customer team there. And look, that's it for our webinar today. So hopefully you found it really valuable, really useful to hear more about duplication, to learn about how we're thinking about solving. It's been very valuable for our team to learn about your attitudes towards, you know, AI and how you would like to see this solution evolve. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, thanks everybody.